Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in person and online for our next and final session of the marketing series for the Founder University of Nevada speaker series. With us joining us today is Dr. Anjala Krishen. I'm going to give a brief introduction and of a lot of the work that she's done here in the ecosystem and in her sectors. And of course, I will give it back over to her to lead us in this presentation. So, Dr. Krishen is a Mel Larson Endowed Chair of Marketing and a professor of the department chair for the Marketing and International Business Department at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Her interdisciplinary research interests include areas within decision-making in rich environments, including heuristics and choice set design, e-marketing and social networking, and database marketing. She is a renowned speaker on topics ranging from information technology to branding and marketing. And she's been featured in numerous publications and speaking engagements, including the TEDx Speaker Series. And she is also a ultramarathoner. Dr. Krishen, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to have you. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to land it to you to share your slides and we'll get started from there.
All right. So hello, everybody. I realize that we're starting a little bit late. I don't want to delay, so I'm just going to get right into it. So what I'm going to do today is sort of walk you through what I believe to be a journey, pun intended, because consumer journeys are kind of one of the newer research areas. And I'm not sure if you all know, but I only found out about this a week ago. So the benefit of that was that this is a pretty fresh set of information and knowledge that I got for you, because what I decided to do was try to do a talk that I'm hoping you couldn't just Google, if that makes sense. So my goal here was to kind of give you information and knowledge that I believe is a little bit harder to come by maybe, and maybe not in your everyday walk of life. So I'm just calling it a research-based exploration of the newest frameworks leading to the consumer journey and the customer journey. So let's just start out here and kind of give you a roadmap. I always tell my students that I like them, so I thought I better use one. I want to start with information and knowledge and kind of I almost always start my talks with that, just a couple of minutes to talk about why I'm going down the pathway I'm going down. Then I'm going to go through a little bit of, what do we call this? Jargon, because there's so many terms all around branding. So I want to kind of walk us through them because I'm doing it chronologically. So kind of walking you through all the different types of research that have come around regarding branding. And I'm hoping that you all ask questions as we go along. But a lot of this is to just kind of think about branding from just backing up a little bit and thinking about what does it mean, and hoping to give you, I always call them tools in your toolbox, to then go back and figure out which ones to use. So we're going to talk about brand personality, which is one of the older concepts, and then move forward to brand experience, brand love, brand coolness, personal branding, hyper-connected branding, consumer journeys, and then time and interest permitting, I can also show you some of my own research, but I'm also willing to just share the slides and that I've put some slides in there. So why am I going down sort of why did I go down the pathway? Because as you see how I put this together, it'll probably become clear this is stuff that's very, very research focused, and there's a reason for that. And so what I like to do is say, okay, first of all, I have to that as faculty at UNLV, what I tend to do is read and write a lot of research papers. And the way that research works is that it's not generally accessible. And that's not necessarily a good thing, but that's just the way it is. Research tends to be purchased through subscriptions that libraries get on campuses. And so every piece of research that I'm going to walk you through one by one, each of these, if you were to buy them, would be about $30 just for one paper. So I always encourage people to say, you know what, I want the whole paper, because if you want them, I'm happy to share them. But I go through this research because the way knowledge works, if I were to ask you, how do you lower your cholesterol? I always like to use that example. You could Google it, find a bunch of stuff. Eventually, you're going to look for the source. I'm going to start with the source. So rather than starting with the things that you would probably see in your everyday images, if you Googled stuff, I'm going to actually start with the source of a lot of this knowledge. And then you'll be getting really the latest stuff, in many cases has not been discussed in your everyday blogs and whatnot. So we're going to start with brand personality. And that's something that has been discussed over the years. But there was what I'm going to call a seminal paper that was written in 1997 by Jennifer Aker. It was actually her dissertation paper. And in that paper, which has been cited, I think, over 1,500 times, which for us is a big freaking deal, she defined what's called brand personality. And she said that it's made up of these 5 components. I'm going to walk you through them really quick. Sincerity, excitement, competence, sophistication, ruggedness. And so people kind of say, where did that come from? And the process that people go through to create what are called constructs or scales, which is basically a set of different pieces or attributes that then line up to create this bigger concept. In this case, it's brand personality, is a lot of interviews. So the process of creating this knowledge involved her talking to a lot of different brand managers and coming up with these from a series of interviews that then landed in a lot of quantitative research as well. So these 5, by the way, again, you'll have these slides, no problem, so don't feel like you have to write down everything. But these 5 pieces turned out among hundreds of thousands of people to be the 5 things that are believed to sort of exemplify a brand in terms of its personality. Now, here of late in 2009, we move forward to another piece of research, which and they actually titled it the New Brand Personality Measure. And part of what I wanted to bring up here too is as we create knowledge, and I think you all know this, but I'm going to repeat it again. It doesn't, the bringing in new knowledge does not make previous knowledge somehow inadequate or wrong. So we kind of live in a world where you can keep adding to the existing knowledge and it's not a problem. So this is something that, you know, the 97 paper will continue to be referenced, continue to be used. This would then augment it with another set of really sub-constructs to represent this personality. And those are now responsibility, activity, aggressiveness, simplicity, and emotionality. Now, as I show you these 2, part of what I wanted you to kind of see was we moved away from really talking about a brand in terms of simply the brand to kind of moving away and talking about the perception of the brand. So let me back up for a second and say that again. Instead of talking about the brand in a vacuum, we started to think about it in terms of how it's perceived. Now, that's a subtle but powerful change. And you think about these years from 97 to 2009, just take a break and think about that. Word of mouth. People started talking a lot more and they had a lot more access to consumer conversations. So I bring that up because we're going to see this pattern as we go forward. Let's move on. Okay, so given that, I'm going to keep going, but if you have questions, please do put them in. My understanding is that Logan's going to keep me informed. Okay, so the brand experience kind of comes next. Now, I'm guessing that many of you have heard of this. We know from the current state of affairs. We know from the way retail and e-tail are now mixing together. We know from malls closing, department stores having trouble staying open. We know that experiences are becoming more and more and more important. We want to go into an Apple store. We want to touch the product. We want to have a 3D view of this product. We want to talk to someone. We can buy that product at Walmart. We can buy that product at Target, but we still go into the Apple store. So we kind of know anecdotally the brand experience is kind of a hot thing. Now in research, it turns out it's actually not that new. The original paper on brand experience was in 2009. So it's been around for a pretty good amount of time. And it's been described as kind of having these 4 key, we call them sub-dimensions or dimensions. And they are, I know that we're crammed in here, so I apologize that it's kind of a lot on the slides, but they're the sensory, affective, behavioral, and intellectual dimensions. So let's back up a sec. Let me walk through a little bit on these. And then I'll move forward. But I want to just say, why did we get to this idea of brand experience? And I like to use the Apple example because I think it really speaks to the brand experience. So first of all, sensory, 5 senses, right? Touch, you know, haptic, smell, sight, hearing. What am I missing? I can't think of the 5th one. And anyway, our 5 senses that are so key critical to our existence in the world, right? How we go through our everyday life is really governed by these 5 senses. That's a big part of the brand experience. And so therefore it does kind of speak to why something like an Apple store has been so successful, because I can pick up the product. I can kind of say, oh, it's different. I bought an iPad recently for my daughter and I looked at it and I said, you know, this is different. And it's different because it's thicker and it's got kind of a beveled edge a different way. Just things that are really hard to see if I looked at it on a screen, right? So they've done a great job of bringing in that sensory. Affective, we also call it, it also means feelings or emotions. So again, getting into that idea of the brand experience has to evoke emotions. Good example of that. The Nike store, if you've ever been to the Nike store in London, is amazing. They hire a DJ, basically 12 to 15 hours a day. It's loud. You feel the energy. You walk into this store and you just get an immediate rush of, I want to go run a mile right now. And so that's what they want because it's Nike. So that's your affect. You immediately have this visceral sensation of feeling. Behavioral, again, if you can get people to physically do something, walk in a certain pattern or follow someone or receive a text message, now you've created a behavior where they have to touch their phone, they have to download your app, whatever. And then intellectual is reading. Can they read something? Can they learn from it? Can they have information or knowledge? And so these are the 4 dimensions now of a brand experience. So thinking about those, why I brought it up next, again, is because it sort of falls into this pattern time-wise, chronologically, because you kind of look and you go, oh, look on the right-hand side here, and we've got this diagram that kind of shows us. And again, I want to show you research. I want to assume that we can figure this out together. But if we can't, feel free to look it up later, ask me questions, send me an email. I'm happy to help you in any possible way. I teach research over the summer. Stop by my class anytime and I'll explain things a little bit more. But what you have here is you have that brand experience leads to brand personality. So what happened there? We had brand personality and somebody said, wait a second. It turns out that we needed to back up and actually create what we call an antecedent to brand personality. How do we get to it? We create the experience. So it builds on top of that existing research. Both are important for satisfaction and ultimately loyalty. So you kind of see how the research is sort of defining these terms. And again, you probably saw them in tons and tons of other blogs and whatnot as well. All right, let's move forward. Excuse me. In 2012, we had 2009. We're going to move forward to 2012. We had this kind of seminal paper on brand love. Again, it's been highly cited. And it was a mover and shaker. When this paper came out, it was like, what? Somebody titled the paper Brand Love. That's it. End of story. Now, we're famous for having long titles, but that was it. It was a 2-word title. And in that title, they said so much because what they said was, excuse me, and again, I'm just picking the best I can off of each of these papers, and they're pages and pages long. So again, I'm happy to share them. I believe I even have a lit folder that I'll ask Logan if he wants to download off of that laptop right now. But they've got these 3 dimensions, which are passion-driven, self-brand integration, and positive emotional connection. So again, talking through those for just a minute. Excuse me, passion-driven behaviors. And feel free to go to the right because these are sub constructs, they're called, of that key thing, which is brand love. And if you start to look at it, what did they call passion-driven behaviors? A lot of this has to do with things that, investing, feeling strong about something because you had this experience. So they've kind of brought in a little bit of that desire to use based on passion, which is, again, passion is something that people have defined in the past as a dimension that goes beyond friendship or attitudes. It's one step further in terms of commitment. Self-brand integration, you can kind of see that we're getting at the self and the identity. And so that's important because, again, moving us forward, it's not good enough. You can see that in 2012 to just think about a brand in a vacuum. We have to start to think about it and put it in this sort of matrix, this complex matrix of the network, of all the people, of all the pieces, the Internet of Things, right? So we started to look at, as far back as 2012, the branding as much more than this simple idea of, I'm going to create this thing, it's going to be usable, people are going to like it, it's going to be differentiated. No, it has to be one step further. How can I create that passion? How can I create that avenue for that self-brand integration? And then thinking about that third one, that positive emotional connection. How and where can I create that positive emotional connection? And so I'm going to take a second here and think about, and if we were in a class with a lot of people, and I do have one person physically here, maybe you want to give me an example, feel free to shout it out. But can we think of a brand that's done a really incredible job of really creating this brand love? Can we think of one top of the mind? I'll give you one if you want. Should I? All right. How about Zappos? Zappos is a local brand. They're here. right around the corner actually from us. I personally love Zappos. I've got former employees, former students who have gone there, work there. I am a beyond loyal customer. I spend over 4 digits a year at Zappos. Why? Because I buy all of my running shoes. Both of my daughters run. I buy all of their running shoes. They've got what's called wallet share for me. What that means is that they haven't seen me as a small dot in the market in terms of market share. They've seen me as an important customer who they should profile, who they should approach, who they should potentially give discounts to, who they should treat with a lot of special care. And so therefore I give it back, right? In terms of my wallet share. And so you think about, what does that mean for me? I am driven by passion. I love Zappos. I will tell that to people. I bring them up in class all the time. I know that I have a sphere of influence, right? People might actually listen to me, might actually go today based on this talk even and say, I wonder why she's so into this company, right? And so I can actually change behaviors based on my own passion. So that kind of gets to this idea of this emotional connection, because guess what? When I'm wearing the shoes, I'm wearing some of the shoes I bought from them today now, I'm feeling the brand. I'm carrying that brand with me. I feel like part of something. So when we get to brand love, we're beyond thinking about the personality. We're beyond thinking about simply the experience, because frankly, how much of an experience have I had buying on Zappos? It's been okay. What I'm really getting at is that they've created that really strong loyalty because I feel really strongly that they care about me. All right. Has it been any direct thing? Do they send me, love notes? No. What's really happened over the years is that when I've been in a pinch, perfect example is Christmas Day, we exchanged gifts and I gave my to-be son-in-law a pair of shoes and he tried them on and they didn't fit, right? And we can get into the whole meaning and sort of the, break that down even more, which is, here's a person who has a really large foot, has always had trouble finding shoes, has always felt really uncomfortable with buying shoes, because any shoe store he goes to, he's got 1 or 2 choices. Same with socks, right? And I'm not a mother of somebody who's got this thing with the feet. And so for me, it was a whole new thing. And here I screw up, right? I buy this pair of shoes for him and they don't fit. I called Zappos right away and I said, I need your help. My to-be son-in-law got these shoes. They don't fit. I feel terrible. They're driving back in, less than 48 hours. The next morning, I had a brand new pair of shoes in 3 sizes at my front door for not a penny. They did a complete exchange for me. I believe the shoes were about 20% more expensive. I didn't pay a penny. I got the chills thinking about this. And that's my visceral reaction. So this is not even a lie. This is a true story based on behaviors that happen. And I have very rarely used their 24/7 warranty. So it's one of those things where 24/7, 365 warranty, I should say. I love this brand. So let's move on. But I love to give examples because I feel like that's what, you're going to notice my style. I only have 9 slides. So don't feel like I'm late because I spend my time on each slide. And then I have a bunch of extras that I've thrown in at the end, but the core talk is really only 9 slides. All right, I want to move forward. Go ahead. Question?
From Sean, we have a number of people mention great brands here. People mention Five Below, Coca-Cola, Sephora, Starbucks,
Awesome,
etc.
Sephora, yes.
And we have a question from Sean. So would you say that the holistic user experience has a great effect on the brand?
Yes, absolutely. So, and I like this because I'm going to get to this. Hold that thought, because you kind of read the mind of the talk and you don't even have the slides. So I love this. Because we're going to get to the holistic user experience, because we're ending with the consumer journey, which is actually the latest sort of jargony word for that holistic consumer experience. So absolutely, the holistic consumer experience is at the core of everything. How do we create that? How do we create that brand love? And right now, as we talk about this, we're still kind of on the side of the business. We're on the side of the you as innovators. We're on your side. We're not as much thinking about the consumer. I'm bringing in the examples of me as a consumer, for example, but really we're on the side of the business, thinking about how do you create this brand love? What are the things you have to do? And in this case, it's those passion-driven behaviors. It's thinking about that self-brand integration, and it's that positive emotional connection. And by the way, these things that I'm showing you in many cases, these research papers, there's actually what we call items And these items can then be asked to people, and you can actually collect data to find out things like how much brand love do I actually have. You can do your own research. It's not unusual. It's actually really important to think about your consumers. And so a lot of what I'm showing you, I'm happy, like I said, to share the papers. Feel free to be thinking about how can I use these things to see if I'm creating this connection. Excuse me. And I can look at existing consumers, new consumers. I can compare when I have a new product come out or a new brand of something. I can use these actual questions to ascertain whether or not I'm hitting the mark. So again, I'm trying to show you things that I'm hoping at some point you can actually put to use. That same set of authors, slightly mixed a little, but Boghosi for sure and Butler are on both of these, came out in 2019 with this, even a newer paper, and they had the, audacity to do a two-word title again. And I'm working with Rick Boghosi now, and he is an absolute gem, very kind person and brilliant. And so I always laughed and I said, only you can come up with a two-word title again. And they called it brand coolness. And again, I had to bring it in because I thought it's such a cool, no pun intended, a cool way to sort of extend the idea of love. And so they took brand love. And again, this stuff builds on itself. It's not that, again, the existence of these new things somehow takes away from the old ones. Absolutely not. We're just building our knowledge base. So let's break this down. And again, I've put up things that I know take a minute to go through. So I try to, I have a tendency, I joke around with my students to talk fast. And then, and so please feel free to, I just, before we started, the question was, hey, do we stop as we go along or do we wait till the end? Absolutely ask questions, clarify anything at all if I'm rushing too fast. So, but I like this. So I want to wait a minute and really have you look at it as I look at it with you and sort of think about what they decided to do. And I always tell people too, and this is important as you think about your own brands, that a picture is worth 1,000 words, because I always say I can write between 2,000 and 5,000 words faster and with less difficulty than I can do one diagram like this. This is so much work because the amount of thinking they have to go through, and it always looks easy. And so I joke around, I have students create these and make them create diagrams, and then they go, oh no, oh no, now I see why this is so difficult, because they had nothing. They had some ideas, and then they had to sit down and figure out how to put them together. So all of these diagrams are kind of, they're frameworks to help us walk through their ideas, but the papers are really long and they explain everything in detail. So I thank them for putting these together. So what they did was they broke it down by niche versus mass cool brands, right? So the niche cool brands are your smaller, let's think about, again, I would love it if they tell you on the chat, or if we say it here in person, to be starting to think about what some brands might be for this. I always tell students a lot of niche brands are brands that exist only on the internet and that are purposefully very, very specific. So when you watch shows like, Shark Tank, right? Yeah, Shark Tank. That a lot of those brands are going to be the niche brands, right? They're going to be something very specific that solves a very specific consumer need. And if they, oh, I thought of one. There's a product that one of our former students named Matthew, Matthew Schultz, he came up with this product called Snooze, SNOOZ. He's got a website. He actually started out at Zappos and worked there for years and came up with this idea through some of their ideation that they do for they're very big on ideation, and they give their employees a chance to create things. And he created this thing called Snooze. We actually had several meetings. It exists now. I have several of them. I love this thing. It really fits that niche cool brand, because what he's done is he's created a physical device that creates a sound from a fan inside of it to help people sleep. It also has a simple app that goes with it. Now, a lot of times when we back up and we think about that, and it was fun because when we ideated on this and I was helping him a little bit, people think, oh, but you should have a USB port on it. Oh, but it should have, we joke around that every lawnmower should have, a speakerphone built in or whatever. And what we realize as all of you as brand managers or entrepreneurs is actually no, think really hard about your unique selling proposition. What is it you're trying to do? Because if you lose focus and you try to put too much in, it doesn't always work, right? So there's that kind of mix of how do you create this pure attachment to this thing? And Matthew was very specific and said, no. My product is going to be, it's going to be old school. It's going to be this thing that people can look at. It's not trying to be small. It's not trying to be an app on your phone to create the sound. You know what? If you wanted to use your phone for your sound, you would. But if you don't, you're going to use my product. And a lot of us don't want to do that. We're tired of our phones. He's been successful. He actually ended up creating his own website, creating his own company, and now he runs it. It's called Get Snooze. But it is a niche cool brand. That's what I would call it. It's taking something that is a need, like I need to sleep at night. And it's creating this entire branding around that. And it's sticking with a very, very niche need, right? And then we have these mass cool brands, and examples of those, I'm sure, I think some of you have already given me some good examples of those, but one could argue Starbucks is a pretty cool brand. Certainly Apple is a cool brand. Nike would be considered a cool brand. And then I wanted to show this because I think this middle part is important, which is what makes them cool. And what do we say? It says a brand is created or adopted by a subculture that perceives the brand to be appropriately autonomous. So think about that again. It is adopted or created, right, by a subculture that perceives the brand to be appropriately autonomous. And so I'm going to tell you again, or tell you for the first time, excuse me, that a subculture is a set of people that share an ethos, that share values. So, so when we teach subcultures, it could be everything from religion, ethnicity, race, military, fraternity, sorority, high school, any club that you join. Those are all subcultures of consumption. So any one person could be in 20 subcultures or 10, over 50, under 40, you name it. So we've got these different subcultures. Again, I like to use VYP, right? Vegas Young Professionals. Some of you might be in there. That is a subculture. You all are getting together. You have an ethos. You have a set of beliefs. Some bigger than others, some more firm than others, some having boundaries more than others, right? Some where you have to earn your way in, some where so there's barriers to entry in some cases and whatnot. What this is saying is to be cool, you need to be adopted or created by a subculture. And so that's fascinating because what subculture is going to adopt or create you? And that's the thought you have to be thinking if you're a niche brand. If you're a mass cool brand, again, you need to spread to the masses over time. And so we've you can see that this is a feedback cycle. It's arguing that, in fact, what starts as a niche cool brand might become a mass cool brand. And when it becomes a mass cool brand, it's spread to even more people. It's not just one tiny subculture, right? And eventually these mass cool brands, if they can hold on to it, need to not lose their cool, right? So they need to stay put where they are. But that upward arrow kind of shows if they do lose their cool, how and why. And they would lose their cool if mainstream consumers perceive them to be undifferentiated. So again, think about that for a second. How do you stay cool has to be part of the focus. You have to be thinking at any given time, because the minute you lose the coolness, you're going to lose some key portions of this branding. So again, that's why you see constant innovation. And we I don't know how many of you have heard of, the things that can happen to Kodak or some of these companies that just didn't stay cool. They didn't move forward. They didn't keep innovating. Some of them make it. They come back, right? They come back strong. But in many cases, innovation has to be in the fabric of every brand anymore. It cannot just be an I want to or I might want to. It has to be in the fabric. All right, we're moving to personal branding. I don't think I have too many more here. And then I'm going to open the floor to questions. And I've also got a lot of my own research that I can, maybe, just kind of threw it in there in case you all wanted to know a little bit about it. But
Dr. Krishen, we do have a few questions.
Sure, go ahead.
Can you give me an example of a subculture being courted by a specific brand and the initial technique used to reach that subculture?
Subculture being courted by a specific brand and the technique used. Okay, all right. I'm going to use ultra runners actually, because I am an ultra runner and it's a very strange subculture. Since I'm part of it, I can say that. And I say it's strange because, and I've done this, I want to say about 9 years. And I've done the ultra thing for about 7 years. And I can tell you that there's just similarities in this particular subculture. And so when you say we've been courted by specific brands, as part of signing up for an ultra marathon, very often you give your email, as you know, and you don't really opt in or out. You just end up in lists. You end up in lists, and so now you're getting all of these emails. And we have been over the years courted by many brands. I'm going to say there's one particular brand that makes, and so it's everything from chafing cream to lotion moisturizer type stuff. So things you would actually use as you run, to belts. So running belts, for example, or there is a brand of ceramics that one of the ultra runners herself created. It's called, and that's part of the reason it has the word mud in it, but I'm forgetting the beginning of it. She creates, these are handmade ceramics, and she creates new ones for every single race. So she's been able to create this sort of subculture of consumption for her product, which has actually launched her into now making more products for bigger audiences. So she actually makes plates now, and she makes things that are not specific to running. And in the beginning, I would say about 7 years ago, it was a much smaller brand. So I have seen this particular community, this subculture, actually start to adopt these small niche products that then very often the brand that makes them can branch out and start to sell to bigger audiences. So that's what's coming to mind.
Yeah.
There's probably many others. And
it looks like you're going to kind of go into this a little bit. So, and Ben did gave a thumbs up, because I think his next question is, how do I go after a subculture? And, you know, that's probably kind of a broad question. You're probably going to touch on those, but if you have any insights prior to you jumping into this, I'm sure Ben would love to hear those. I would say that, okay, I'm going to answer this with my own personal bias, research. So I'd say step one, get consumer data, whether you can get it third party. So whether you can get it through a Nielsen database online, there's a lot of free data out there. I'm trying to think of the names of these, but there's a lot of free data that's collected by the government, for example, has a lot of free data databases. There's reports. Feel free to send me an email, because I'm blanking out on the name of some of the ones that I've used in the past. But this is some of this research, literally, you know, courtesy of information on the web, can be done online. So first step, before you even try to court a subculture, is to just research the heck out of your audience. Who is my market? What do they look like? Who wants my product? And some of that might be, again, third-party research, looking at different databases, checking existing consumer reports. That's step one. Step two is to actually start to collect data on people. Go out and do a survey, hire somebody to do a survey for you, sit down and do a focus group. You know, if you're stuck, the best way to get your foot in the door a lot of times is to come to us, because universities, we're cheap in general and we want data. So a lot of times we'll do studies for you or we'll help you. But I think data is really important, and research is really important. Step one. Then once you think you've identified some potential, you know, a potential set of targets, right? You start to look at, okay, who are actually out there that I might have? What are my different target markets? Once you start to get that, your segments, your market segments, now you can sort of say, okay, I need to buy a database list, right? There's going to be lists out there that you can purchase of people that are in these subcultures of consumption. They're not super cheap, but once you purchase those email lists, now you can do different things, whether it's sending them promotions, you know, inviting them to events, having, you know, again, think about the 4 Ps. So try to think of different ways you can approach them, giving them a free trial, whatnot. So again, if you're taking up somebody's time, if you're touch pointing, whether that's an email or whether that's an event, you always want to think about what are they getting in return? Because if they're showing up, right, if they're reading it, make sure that you think about what are they getting? What is that two-way exchange? Where's the value for them? So yeah, a little quick lesson, a slight digression, but it's a great question, and I love it. So that's good. Okay, awesome. So let's spend a couple seconds here. I think I was going to go for another 5 to 7 minutes and then open it up for more questions. But personal branding. So this one, I actually did a talk on this. There is a video. Goodness knows where it is, but I'll be happy to share it later. I did a talk on personal branding for UNLV because it actually got shared with the faculty, which is always hilarious because apparently we need to worry about our personal branding too.
So they came to me and they said, Angela, can you do a talk? And then I remember it was 5 minutes, which was hilarious because as you see, as I can talk a lot. So it was a rush job and I put it together fast. And I just picked up a few things from that talk and stuck them on this one slide. So it's very, it's a cursory look at personal branding. But I want you to think about it because when we get to the last slide, that is, I think, part of this initial talk, I want you to stop and think about how the, sort of the progression over time of branding really has moved from a product, a service, an experience to you as an individual, as an entrepreneur, or as a set of entrepreneurs as part of your brand. Like you are no longer separate from what you do and what you sell. And that change, you know, in 2023 and beyond, likely, we're not going to go backwards. I doubt it. I doubt we'll go backwards away from influencers, away from this idea of word of mouth, away from this kind of co-opting of what you can possibly do out there, right? Wait, I feel like, oh, there it is. Okay. Oh, shoot. I have one extra that I thought, because I'm about to get into hyper-connected. So I do want to keep moving here, but you need to be thinking about who you are as a brand. What do you stand for? What do you believe in? And how much of that do you want to put into this product or service or offering that you've put together? Because what you share will be found. So I'll say that again. What you share will be found. Everything you write on Amazon reviews, everything you write on blogs, things you write, I mean, I'm not saying email because we hope we don't get there, but certainly any social media that you have, any presence, whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or Twitter, these are all parts of your brand persona. You need to make sure they're consistent with what you're trying to do with your career, with your products or services, et cetera. So I, in brief, give you a few steps here. Define your ultimate goal. What do you want to do? Where do you want to be? Identify what are your unique characteristics. What's your unique selling proposition? What makes you as a brand unique? Develop your narrative. What do you want to be? I am a researcher. That is my narrative. I don't stray from that. If I'm asked to give a talk, I bring research in. That's just what I do because that's part of my own narrative. That's part of my own brand. And it's what I think I should know how to do and what is my unique selling proposition. Therefore, if I start to try to give you a talk that, I don't know, you know, the CEO of Google could give you, I probably would fail because ultimately that CEO is going to know a lot more than I do about how to run their company. And they're going to know a different set of knowledge. So what I do for my brand is to really stick with what I'm good at. Introduce yourself through multiple channels and be consistent in your image. This is really important. We all know this. We've all seen failures here. We've all seen where people have, you know, crazy pictures loaded up or didn't really think about their brand. And it can really cost a lot, right? That public image is important. And once it's messed up, it's a huge recovery path. There's a big path to recovery that is expensive, unfortunately. And then I say, focus on your performance to increase your popularity. I love that one the most. Focus on your performance to increase your popularity. What does that mean? Don't try to take shortcuts. Don't, you know, throw out a bunch of candy because that's great. And it works really short term, right? But if I walk into class and I give out candy and then I leave, chances are my reputation is going to be toasted. At some point, they came to learn. Students are not ding dongs. They know, hey, she's just trying to buy us. She's buying us with popularity. She's not actually performing. So stick to the performance, ultimately that performance, giving people what they want, thinking about your offer, making that exchange of value, that's going to ultimately make you more popular. So I want to move to the hyper-connected. I don't want to not do this one because it's bringing us so far forward. So we went from what I believe was 2019 or 2020. Again, we're sticking with 2020, but we're going to call this hyper-connected branding. And please do look at these later if you want to, because I know that I'm flying through and there's a lot on these screens. But again, love this diagram. We do love these in marketing, marketing research because we love showing dimensions. So they've kind of shown two dimensions. One of them is what they're calling the blurring, and the other one is what they're calling the broadening of branding. And the people who wrote this paper, by the way, have been doing branding research forever. So if you look at the bottom, Bernd Schmidt is actually an expert in brand experience. Vanitha Swaminathan, she's also an expert in branding and brand personality. So you're going to notice some of these authors have been writing on these topics for years, for decades. Same with Bagosi. Bagosi Boghosi goes back. He's been a PhD for, I think, 50 years, still doing research, still active at Michigan. I think he's close to retirement. I don't want him to retire, but I think he's close. So where did we go? Just really briefly. Here we kind of have the broadening. We started, if this is kind of at the bottom left is kind of, and I forget that I guess you're seeing what I'm doing here with my hands. But at the bottom left, we started with this kind of really, how do I put this? This sort of original pre-20s, pre-2000s even idea that there's this firm and there's this product brand, right? You think about GM, and these brands have still lasted. You think about Cheerios. I mean, these guys are still hanging out, but things have changed because when we think of this porous boundary, so let's move upward from that bottom left. What we decided to do there was we included not just the firm, but the consumers and the market participants. And then instead of just saying the product, we said the platform. So what did we mean by that? Let's just spend a minute there. The reason that we said, and by the way, on the left says shared ownership. So why did we say that? Guess what? Let's use Cheerios as an example. It's no longer just about the Cheerios and the company who made the Cheerios. It's about all the people who make videos about Cheerios, and there are tons. These are iconic brands that have been around forever. Think about Oreos. There have been so many YouTube videos. I give the example in the opposite bad direction of Dell, but they've now recovered. But at one point, there was an entire set of videos of people burning their Dells because they were so upset about the bad service. And it slammed that brand for years. They had to recover and come back, and they actually now have an ideation website where they ask people, hey, what should we do? What are we doing wrong? Constantly getting feedback. So there's your idea of, I have to think about the shared ownership. I don't own this brand by myself. It's not just mine. What people think about my brand is actually what my brand is. The perception is the reality. I can't separate them anymore, right? So there's your idea of that platform brand. It's your brand across multiple platforms. Let's move to the right. You've got now the idea of the broader conceptualization is also the person who owns the brand is the person brand. So not only is it me as a firm and what people think of me as a firm, it's also I'm an owner of Zappos. So I'm part of this entire branding of Zappos too. So I could actually, and think about influencers again. And somebody said Sephora, great example. They've done such a great job of influencer marketing, right? They've got so many makeup artists that constantly make videos using their products, show the products, put the name on, allow links to purchase the products. Some get money back, some get free product, some just do it for fun. Some are medical school students that are, it's a weekend and they want to go make a video putting on makeup. I say that because I know one. But there are influencers that are just happenstance. They're just doing this as a creative outlet for fun, and you're getting that free branding. So how do you think about that? That's part of the whole, I guess, push/stress of thinking about these broader models of this hyperconnection, because it's so important to think about that person who owns the brand. And then finally, on the very right, you think about this idea branding idea, which is ultimately, could they create something totally new so they can take my brand? And there's a lot of really good examples of this where, let's see, at the top of my mind, Bounce. So you think about the Bounce sheets, those dryer sheets that how many of you, and if I were in class, people would raise their hands, but how many people have thought or heard about a ton of ways to use a dryer sheet? Has anybody get in the chat about that? Different ways to use a dryer sheet, right? Yeah. I'll give you an example. I like to make candles, and I did not know how to take candle wax off of something because, of course, I make a big fat mess. And somebody posted, use a hair dryer and then wipe it with a dryer sheet. What? Brilliant. Worked. Was perfect. Now people are upcycling, recycling. So if I have a dryer sheet, how can I use it once I've already used it 2 times in my dryer? What do I do with it? Sustainability. Big deal, right? So if you can be thinking ahead as a brand about how do I create that next evolution of my product? I created the first one. What are people going to do with it once they're bored? Then you're a step ahead because you're in that idea brand. All right. And now I really am on the very last one of my original thing. And then I have a bunch of my that I'm going to share in case you want them of my own research. But it's not related. For the most part, it's not directly related. So I picked you research that was, stuff that I haven't done, but that's really cutting edge. And so I'm ending with 2023. And to one of the questions we had was, how does this look in terms of the holistic consumer? So I wanted to end with, we talked about branding for a long time, but ultimately it comes down to the consumer. So, we can think brand, but at the end of this is the consumer, right? Where are they? How are they? And so in addition to this hyper-connected journey or this hyper-connected branding that we have to think about, we also have to start thinking about consumers and their own journey. And just really briefly, we've got this kind of, how do you design a journey? Thinking about everything from who's designing it, what kind of staff you should have, how do you align with it? How do you actually create it, to activating it and to extending it? So really, the perspective here is still from the firm side. It really is from the brand creator side. But you're thinking ahead because you're not just, again, thinking about that initial purchase. You're thinking even in the purchase, that decision-making process, what does that look like? And again, coming down to my always answer to you is do research, literally sit there as when I have students do projects, I have them go through the process. Like, okay, you want to create this website. I want you to go in and use it, start to finish. Go buy a product. What does that look like for the consumer? How many times do they have to click to finally get their product? How long does it take them to get it? Do they know when they're going to get it? And once they get it, what do they do if it doesn't work? Or what does that look like? And then what if they like it? What outlet do they have? How are they going to tell you they like it? Did you give them an easy way to do that? Did you have follow through? Did you have follow up? So that journey, thinking about the journey requires you to think about the pre, the during, the post, right? Before they buy it, while they're purchasing it, after they buy it. That full journey, and then how to extend it. How do you make it that dryer sheet that they're going to recycle, that they're going to think about, that they're going to go and say, okay, I could actually do something else with this. And not only am I going to do something else, I'm going to feel really good about it because I'm about to post it. And my post, that's a video, is about to get viral because everyone's going to watch it and I'm going to feel really good. So now my win is also the brand's win. And so that's the crazy part, is if you can get these, I always think of consumers are essentially these mini activists for you, these mini advocators, sorry. They're advocating for you. They're running around sort of being your words, thinking about things that you may have not even thought about. And so how do you get them to be the closest thing to your employees, right? How do you get them to be faithful to you, loyal to you, give you ideas, back you up? And so that's kind of, I ended in a way with this, and then I sort of have a few of my own pieces of research at the end. And I mean, we could be here for days. So I want to not do those right now. I just want to sort of end with this consumer journey and open it up because I know we only have a few minutes left to questions. So
We do. We got
hit me with it.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to take just a few questions. And of course, please connect to Dr. Krishen on LinkedIn. Reach out to her. Please shoot us an email if you have any questions for her. We'll do our best to put you in contact with her and get these questions answered. We have time for probably 2 or 3 questions, and then we got to do our closing statements and wrap this up so those that are joining us can get out of here. There's a couple of comments about great insight from David. And David, feel free to lend some insight to this. Discuss Coke versus New Coke, and I think this is when you were talking about so any insights you have on that as far as like a branding perspective.
Yeah, that's a great one. We use that in a market research case. Actually, I use that one. We could talk here for hours on that one, but real briefly, the argument against, so it's, I like it because it's specifically, that case actually deals with branding, because the argument there was that Coke really didn't think about the key attribute when they came out with New Coke. So I'll back up. Just so you know, Coke is a big company. And by the way, I'm a Diet Coke fanatic, but Coke is a big company and they do a lot of research, right? So what we don't want to do is assume that, boy, they really blew it. It's not that they didn't do research. They did a lot of research. But what happened was, in the process of doing their research, they weren't super clear on what are the things that are actually drivers for the purchase behavior. Excuse me. What is the very last thing people think about when they purchase Coke? And it turns out taste is not the thing. It turns out that if you give people a blind taste test of Coke versus New Coke, and they like New Coke better, which many did, they will still not buy New Coke. So let's back up. Let's back up and think about this, because it's amazing and brilliant and really fun, because you think about consumers. I always joke around with my economics friends in the economics department, some of which I'm working with now, is that it's just proof right there. We are not fully utilitarian. We are not fully looking at maximizing benefit. We are not always saying, oh, which one's cheaper? No, our decision-making process is far more complex. So the reason it's not that we are, not intelligent. Oh, we like the taste better, so we didn't buy it. Shame on us. No, it turns out that we like things for other reasons. It's called nostalgia. It's called a feeling we get. It's called a memory we have from when we were in. For me, saltines and Diet Coke were a big part of my diet. Freshman year at Rice University. And so every time I get a Diet Coke, I'm brought back to those moments, that crazy time in my life when I left home and I had all these friends and, ninth floor in Brown College. All of these memories come back to me because Diet Coke brings that back. I'm reminded that my older daughter, I was able to somehow get her into my Diet Coke cult. And so she likes it too. And so I think about her. And so the reason that sometimes, and so I love the New Coke idea, is the learning we had to do from that was to think about more than just taste. Taste is only one attribute. They shouldn't have just done a taste test. They should have thought about, when you know what brand it is, would you be willing to buy this? And what they would have found is that their loyal customer base would have said no. And so then they had to decide, did they want a new customer base? Did they want an extension? Was it going to make a difference for them? And it turns out they didn't need an extension. They already were fighting really hard to keep their Diet Coke brand and their Coke brand. And it turns out that, people are more willing to drink Pepsi and Diet Pepsi than to drink New Coke. And so, put that one away for a while, put it on the shelf, go do cherry, go do vanilla, go think about other stuff, because guess what? People don't want to switch from Coke to New Coke. So that answers the question.
Thank you so much. And we have a couple of questions trickling in. We'll collect them and send them to you, or let me know.
Patient. Thank you so much.
But we do want to say thank you for joining us in person and online. Thank you, Dr. Krishen.
Thank you so much.
And we will see you all in 2 weeks. Have a wonderful holiday weekend.
Bye, everybody. Take care.